Hello, my name is Dudley Thomas. The purpose of this recording today is for me to share my testimony about a series of events that occurred on Mount Ararat in 1980. They are a combination of my personal experiences as well as documented intelligence reports of the said events. These events occurred in Turkey and clearly have an impact on history, science, and religion. I have withheld the details concerning these events due to the full expectation that the events would be revealed by the U.S. government to the public. I am bewildered by the fact that it's been 32 years and there has been no revelation of this information by any of the superpowers that are well aware of what occurred in 1980 there. In fact, to this very day, these events and the details thereof are closely guarded. In 1980, I served on board the U.S. nuclear submarine USS Casimir Pulaski, SSBN 633, a fleet ballistic missile submarine, and I served as a sonar supervisor. On a specific day, the submarine received an emergency action message to spin up all missiles for tactical launch. This is not to be confused with Weapon System Readiness Test, or WSRTs as they were called, which occurred on a fairly regular basis. This was the first occurrence of a for tactical launch message that I had personally been involved in. I knew, as did the commanding officer of the submarine, that this was in fact the real deal, so to speak. We were at battle stations and prepared to launch missiles for a number of days. Over 10,000 Russian soldiers had penetrated the Turkish border, and this was considered to be an act of war by the United States government. Here they were on top and around Mount Ararat when we had just reestablished good relationships with the government of Turkey after many years of hard effort. For no apparent reason now, the Russians were invading Turkey, or so it seemed. Satellite images had revealed division-level strength operating on and around Mount Ararat. We spent days on the edge of our seats, as we expected to receive a release to fire at any moment. And suddenly, as quickly as we received the order to prepare to launch, the order came to stand down. It brought great perplexity to the United States Navy, and we were concerned that we would still go to war with Russia. Sometime after arriving back to port, though, the commanding officer came into the sonar shack where I was, and he dropped a book on my lap, and he said, "This is what the shakeup was all about." As a point of reference, the commanding officer was on the Military Science and Intelligence Committee. He would receive journals dealing with current events as relating to science and intelligence. As sonar supervisor, I carried a top secret clearance and was in charge of classified material. The journal in question is called Science and Intelligence Highlights, or S&T Highlights. This is well known among the intelligence community. This particular volume was very large and contained a sizable section subtitled Noah's Ark. I thought, what? Noah's Ark? I considered this to be very strange, and I didn't know what to think about it. I didn't know if it was historical, if this was a scientific issue, or if this was religious. I was just amazed that this had occurred and that this was written in the journal. I'm now going to share with you information related to this event, and I will not share any information that can be considered classified information. And I believe that what I'm sharing, if it were placed under any scrutiny at all, would not fit the requirements to be labeled as classified material. So anything that I will share here is, in my understanding of what meets the requirements of being classified, does not meet those requirements. And certainly the knowledge of Noah's Ark would not meet that requirement. No one on this planet has a right to keep that information withheld from the population of the world. I don't care who you are. You have no right to do this. The requirement for top secret and secret levels of classification are very specific. Unfortunately, in this day and time, it's common practice for acronym agencies within different governments to cover up any event that they would prefer to be kept out of the eye of the public by simply classifying it without justifiable cause, as was the case here. Without further ado, here are the events. Mount Ararat had been experiencing the warmest weather on record. As a result, the ice on the top of the mountain began to melt. Lo and behold, there sat a large ship on the top of Mount Ararat. Well, intelligence reports came in that it was Noah's Ark on the top of Mount Ararat. And again, I thought, this is, how can they know that? Well, they further described it as if it were right off of the showroom floor. It had been perfectly preserved in the ice. 2/3 of the ark sat on the top of Mount Ararat, and 1/3 sat at about 14,000 to 14,500 feet. The bow of the ship could be clearly seen, and there was no doubt as to whether or not it was Noah's Ark. Satellite photos with dimensional grids depicted the measurements to be an exact match to those written in the book of Genesis. The U.S. military science and intelligence community were in complete agreement that this was in fact Noah's Ark. As it turns out, the Russians had picked it up on satellite and decided that they had to remove it so as to protect their ideology. The commanding Russian general that was on the ground had stated, and I quote, "Our ideology cannot survive the proof of the existence of a God." Based upon this determination, most of Noah's Ark was removed from Mount Ararat by the Russian army. The following means were employed in the removal process. 10,000 soldiers formed a hand-to-hand line from the top of Mount Ararat down to below the 10,000-foot level where the transport helicopters could carry a payload. Large ice-cutting saws, which were larger than anything that I'd ever seen, were hoisted up to the mountain and employed to cut the ark into pieces small enough that they could be hoisted down the mountain. Every piece was labeled. A constant trail of helicopters carried their payloads to a secure location. All of the 2/3 section of the ark on the top of Ararat was removed. As the Russian soldiers were removing the smaller part of the ark at the 14,000-foot level, an unexpected freak summer storm covered Mount Ararat with several feet of snow. This made it impossible to continue removal operations. The Russian general and his troops left as quickly as they had come. The journal that's been discussed up to this point also included dozens of pictures of the ark, both from U.S. satellites as well as quote-unquote other sources. Among these were pictures of exterior and interior views, including rooms and stables. The United States government had managed to obtain numerous samples of the artifacts via other means. The samples included gopher wood, grain, fecal, and fodder samples, just to name a few. Full analysis was conducted of all samples by the United States government and posted in the journal. The wood was proven to be extinct and fitting the description of that depicted in the book of Genesis. There was never, and I repeat never, any question as to whether or not this was Noah's Ark. It was an established fact by the major superpowers that this was indeed Noah's Ark. I have shared these events from time to time. On one occasion, I shared in a meeting where an individual stood up, identifying himself as an employee of the Central Intelligence Agency, and he ordered me to shut up for my own good. I asked him, "Are you aware of the events that occurred?" And to this he responded, "Yes." I then asked him, "Do you have any religious interest or any historical interest or scientific interest?" And he responded, "Well, I am a Christian." I then asked, "How can you claim to be a Christian and willingly hide what is quite possibly the most important archaeological find to your belief in all of history? It cannot be an issue of national security. If it were, it would have to cause serious or grave damage to the national security of the United States. Are you saying that the U.S. ideology cannot afford the proof of the existence of a God?" And to this he answered, "Nothing." I don't know what to say about most of the Noah's Ark discoveries and the claims that have been made, but make no mistake, this is the truth of what happened to Noah's Ark in 1980 on Mount Ararat. I am amazed that after 32 years, none of this information has been released to the public. I would like to see a Senate investigation as to why these events have not been disclosed to the public. Thank you for your time very much.